everyone, Sientir here with another game review and analysis. It's been a while since I've done one of these. Today I want to talk about Dragon Quest Builders. This game, I played it on the Switch, and spoilers, I enjoyed it a lot. Now, the game itself is basically a variant on Minecraft. I'm not going to be able to compare them a whole lot directly because I haven't really played Minecraft a whole lot. I've seen it, but I haven't really played it. And so I also know that there's been a number of changes to Minecraft over the years, but without having that experience, I can't myself do direct comparisons. I'm sure that you can find them out there, though. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of why I have enjoyed this game so much, and part of why I was able to get into it and haven't really latched on to Minecraft. And a lot of that has to do with the way that it has more of a story and a set engagement going on. So there's a number of things system-wise that I really like about Dragon Quest Builders. So the first one is that you have a sense of purpose of what you're doing when you start up the game. You're trying to build or rebuild a fallen town. So you start off in a small tutorial area that's effectively a sort of mausoleum place that goes over how to do various things, build stuff, collect resources, stuff like that. And from there, you journey out into Cantlin. So the game itself is kind of structured in 5 parts. There are 4 story areas, and then there's Terra Incognita mode, which is kind of an open build area. I don't think it's quite the same as Minecraft Creative Mode, from what I understand of Minecraft Creative Mode, but it's in a similar vein. I'll discuss it in a bit here, but when you first start the game, you're kind of being talked to by a goddess named Rubis, and you have the power to create and to build stuff, which is something that the people of the land have lost. So the general story is that there was some sort of hero that was supposed to fight the Dragon Lord. I think these are probably general sort of Dragon Quest things, but I've not played any Dragon Quest games before, so I don't know for sure. But fighting the Dragon Lord, which is some sort of like king of the monsters, and that hero was offered a choice of half the world, and chose that, and the world was plunged into darkness. Humans were robbed of the ability to create stuff, and everything's kind of been overrun by monsters, and it's not great. So you come along, you have the ability to create. And so Rubisk gives you a flag, and you plant it in this middle of this town square of Cantlin, and it creates an area of light, because the whole world's been kind of thrust into basically overcast. Think the Matrix, how everything's overcast in the Matrix. Kind of like that, sort of. And so you have this area where there's actual light and a break in the clouds, because basically everything's super overcast. And you set up in this area a town, and so you set up defenses. Residents come and live there. They're all kind of story oriented, and there's quests that they give you and stuff like that, which is really cool. And so you kind of repeat this process in 4 different locations. So you have Cantlin is the starting one, and then you have Rimoldar, and then Kollengallenholm, which are kind of like 2 separate kind of named places, and then Tantagel, which kind of works a bit differently, and it's kind of the final area that has a bit of a different structure to how it works. But the general structure of what you have is you come to a place, you begin building up the town, you kind of establish yourself well enough, and get some initial NPCs, and then you have to defend your town from waves of monsters and sort of defend your town from wave of monster quests. I don't have a better name for them than that. But when you defeat the final monster, you're given a teleporter that takes you to different islands. So this is the general structure of the game. That you have sort of your home base area, and then you have different islands where you go to do quests and gather new resources to be able to build stuff. So the game itself tends to be structured in a couple of different ways. There's the main quests that take you to locations to find stuff. There are building type quests in 3 varieties. There's an official build quest where they give you a blueprint, you place it down on the ground, and then you have to copy what's in that blueprint. Sometimes there's sort of side quests where somebody will say, I would like this type of room with these sorts of things in it. And then there's also, you'll sometimes stumble across something out in the world that you can mimic it, similar-ish to kind of like a blueprint, except you don't get a blueprint, you get a thing that you imitate next to it. You have to figure out how to imitate it, and that unlocks something. And then you have defend your town from monsters type quests. So these are kind of the general shape of things. But the game itself has a couple of notable systems that I kind of want to go over. So it does have a day-night cycle. And this is very important because at night it is actually dark. It becomes hard to see. Your light sources that you put in your town are very important. And also there are special ghost-type enemies that spawn at night that are really annoying. And you have to deal with them. So adventuring at night can be a bit difficult. As a character, you have different weapons and tools that you can use to harvest resources and defeat enemies. The combat's not super complicated. It's mostly just hit the attack button to slash at enemies, and then you can kind of run around. You can jump. There is falling damage. You can get accessories to help protect you from that. Once you get far enough through, fairly early, but not right away, you can build a colossal chest, which is a special chest for storing supplies that you have access to from kind of the main game menu, which you can just bring it up. It's where you manage your equipment, you can manage your items, and when you have the chest, you can access the chest from there. And also, if your actual inventory bar at the bottom of the screen fills up, you can stuff will automatically go to that chest if it's not full. So you have some of that. There's hunger, so you need to fill your hunger meter by eating food. So this definitely becomes a priority fairly early on, especially in some of the later levels of finding sources of food that are reliable. And then one of the very key systems is sort of the interaction with the NPCs in the town. So you get different items like beds that you can make, for example. Different things like different types of light sources, torches, bonfires, cooking stoves that are variants on bonfires and stuff. These are all things that you can make stuff at. So different types of crafting stations, different light sources. So you make a room. And a room is defined as a 2-block high, fully enclosed space with a door and a light source. That's a basic room. And then there's different types of rooms. There's a bedroom. If you have 2 things that are classified as beds in them, like a straw mattress or a fancier bed, there's a couple of different types of beds. Those will make a bedroom if you have 2 of them. So you have different room recipes, some of which you discover. Often blueprints are used to direct you to making these. The NPCs will be like, hey, make this thing, or add these things to this space to make it this type of space. So you have these sorts of things going on that make spaces certain types of spaces, which is really cool. And the thing that's really cool in particular about it is that NPCs will interact with these spaces. They'll go to sleep at night in the bedroom areas, inns, or simple bedrooms, or whatever you've made, private bedrooms. There's different types of sleeping areas. They will craft stuff for you in crafting rooms. So like a smithy, for example, as a type of crafting room. Forget exactly what all of them are named off the top of my head, because there's quite a few. There's quite a few different crafting stations. But they will go and they will make stuff and put them in chests, and then you can go retrieve them. And these are free resources. Notably, what's really handy is they will cook food for you where you don't have to gather the ingredients. And this is something that's really, really cool, is you feel like the NPCs are actively helping you because they're making stuff to help you build things or survive because of food. If your hunger meter fully depletes, by the way, all that happens is you start taking damage over time. It's not super fast, so it does give you some time, but that's what happens with hunger. It's something that you kind of need to worry about, and I like it from a certain amount of immersion and a certain amount of survival standpoint, because the game very much so has kind of a survival feel. But what you have with this system of rooms and stuff that NPCs interact with is the feeling of activity going on around you, the feeling that you're building up a town for people to live in because they are doing stuff there. And this is something that I really, really love. This system really lends a sense of life to the place. And what's really cool is this system persists into Terra Incognita. So Terra Incognita follows a slightly different model. You have the main area of Terra Incognita, island, continent, whatever you want to call it. But you have this main area where you can build stuff. There's a couple of special things there. Notably, there are summoning stones. There's two types. There's a summon to you and a summon from you, if that makes sense. But the summon to you summoning stone defines an area where it will load something that somebody else has built from over the internet in the game. And then the summoning from, I think they're yellow. There's black as summoned to and yellow as summoned from. It's not important, but it helps distinguish them. Where it will take what you have built and send it over the internet. So this is really kind of cool. And then you can build stuff there, and people will come and join you. They'll come and live with you. You'll get new residents. Sometimes monsters will come and hang out, but there's no hostile monsters for the most part, except for like one early quest to unlock a special resident. There are no monsters that live, hostile monsters, I should say, that live on the main area of Terra Incognita. So when you complete stuff in the sort of story areas, then you'll unlock stuff in Terra Incognita. So you have to beat Caitlin before you unlock Terra Incognita, because there's a final boss to each area. And once you have beaten that boss, then a light will open up. When you go to that light, it sort of ends that campaign, as it were, or chapter, I suppose is more accurate, and unlocks stuff from that campaign in Terra Incognita. The big thing that it unlocks is the ability to visit an island through a teleportal on the main Terra Incognita island to areas that are based on each individual land that you visited. So, for example, Caitlin has Caitlin-type enemies, Caitlin-type resources, that sort of stuff. Stuff that you would find in Caitlin. There's one for Remoldar, based on stuff that you'd find in Remoldar, and the enemies that you'd find there, and that sort of thing. And one for each region, and as you beat one of those regions, it unlocks that teleportal. So those areas do have enemies and stuff you don't want to build there. You can reset them, so that way you can reharvest resources from them that might be depleted, which is really cool. And so you can go into those hostile areas, but then you can come back to your home base where it's safe. And this structure is really kind of neat. And it has, like I said, it has the NPCs that show up and do stuff in your town. You can have them join your parties, so you can have adventuring parties as well. This is something that's kind of introduced partway through the game. And this means that Terra Incognita has the same sort of sense of lived-inness that the main areas have, which I really appreciate. I really like that sense of lived-inness. I like the idea that I'm creating a place not just for myself, but also for these NPCs, that there's a meaning to the rooms that I'm making, that the game recognizes certain types of rooms. It gives me something to build towards, and not just kind of, oh, this looks nice or whatever, but it gives it a sense of purpose, which I really appreciate. That's something that's really important to me in games, is to have kind of a sense of purpose. So in the main game, for example, I have the sense of purpose of building up this town, but building up a town for these NPCs and standing in defiance of what's going on. And that whole thing kind of continues, and that's what I needed to get engaged in the mechanics. Minecraft, especially early Minecraft, I think it has a story mode now, but before it had any sort of story, I didn't have anything that really for me to engage with. And with Dragon Quest Heroes, because it does give me something to engage with, I really connect with it. And that's really important to me. That's something that I really like. And it gives me a lot to think about as well, from a game developer standpoint. So the overall game, there's not a whole lot necessarily more to say about it. I've kind of gone over sort of the systems and the different structures that it uses. There's, like I said, there's a bunch of different crafting stations. There's some super crafting stations in Terra Incognita that kind of combine a bunch of functionality, because there's like so many different crafting stations. So it's nice to have these sort of combined functionality ones. There are some complaints that I have about the game. It is a third-person game, which overall I like. I generally tend to prefer third-person games over first-person, but I would like very much to have an intentional ability to kind of toggle into a first-person mode, and the game does not have that, which I find a little frustrating. The other thing is that one of the things that you can do, like when you're placing blocks, you place them in front of your character. I would like to be able to sort of reorient non-block objects. For example, say you're placing a statue of Rubus for whatever reason. I'd like to be able to rotate that, or a candlestick, or something like that, where I could rotate it to face a particular direction. Because as it is, you have to kind of be able to physically place your character in the right way to be able to place stuff, if that makes sense. And I can find that to be a little frustrating. Like I said, I'd like to have an intentional first-person mode. It can slip into a first-person mode, but it requires like specific circumstances for that to happen with the camera. And you can adjust the camera's distance from your character by pushing in... I can never remember. I think it's the left thumbstick. It's one of the thumbsticks. But pushing that in will take you to a... closer camera, but you can't toggle intentionally a first person, which I think is a bit of a loss. That's definitely a complaint. You do have equipment that generally degrades over time, by the way. I forgot to mention it. So you need to collect certain resources to be able to do that. Speaking of which, I wish that there are certain resources that I wish were a little bit more accessible in quantity, particularly in Terra Incognita. It might be that I just haven't figured it out. One thing that I do like that they have, by the way, while I'm thinking about it, is they have, in each chapter, they have challenges for you to do, 5 challenges. Usually it's something like collect X types of resources, for example. And then when you complete the chapter, you can complete the challenges, and that will unlock additional stuff in Terra Incognita, which I think is really cool. And it gives you some additional things to try to accomplish. And I very much so appreciate that. But yeah, there's definitely some control stuff as well. So when you're placing stuff, you place it by pushing the X button. But you can also use some shoulder buttons to adjust your looking angle up or down. And when you're holding down those shoulder buttons, you don't rotate as you move. So normally when you move, your character faces the direction that you push to move, right? That makes sense. But when you're holding down one of the shoulder buttons, you won't rotate. You also will not rotate while holding down the X button, but you'll also continuously place stuff. I really wanted a button to just lock myself in facing, but without looking up or down, so that way I could just kind of hold it and then tap X, because the thing is, if you try to, if you're not looking up or down and you hit X and there's a block in front of you where the thing that you'd place would go otherwise, it will place it on top of that. Right? That sounds a little confusing, but basically think of it this way. You'll automatically stack objects when you push X to a height 1 above. So, like, if it's a blank spot in front of you, you push X, it will place a block. If you push X again, it will place another block on top of that one. If you push X a third time, it will be like, hey, there's no space here now. But if you jump, then push X, it will place it a third thing. So what this translates to, or sort of means, is that there's not a good way of, like, walking sideways while placing a layer in front of you, because you'll automatically put things double high. And I would have liked to have had a button to hold down to keep a facing... Like, you can get around it by, like, holding down the look high or low, moving sideways, releasing, pushing X, then holding down the button, releasing, pushing X. Like, but it's kind of an awkward sort of way of doing stuff. So I would have liked a little bit, additional bit with control scheme. They do let you do a little bit of customization in terms of what buttons exactly will do the looking up and down. I don't remember exactly what they are. I've set it up to be what I liked and don't pay attention to the other ones, but there's like 3 options there of, like, pushing the shoulder buttons on one side is look up and the other side is look down, or do you want it to be the shoulder buttons on the right side look up and down, like the higher one looks up and the lower one looks down, or the left side does that. I think that's what they are. And then also I should add in Terra Incognita, there is a gladiator mode where you can get basically these tickets to fight enemies, and it'll spawn several enemy waves. This can be a good way to get resources that enemies drop specifically, and you can make higher level tiers of these waves. And then there's some special crafting stuff that you can access only in Terra Incognita mode. But overall, I do like the game quite a bit. And so I'm going to go ahead and transition now into lessons learned. And one of them for me is this idea of how they've structured stuff, and it's actually not dissimilar from something like The Sims. Not that I've really played The Sims, but I've just read some about how they do stuff. But it was helpful to kind of see an application of it, where you have specific things that are specified for different types of interactions, and then the NPCs will automatically do those interactions with those things and kind of develop some sort of pattern around that. And that's something that I really like. It gives me a lot to think about as a game designer. And this was just kind of my own chance to really see that in action and see what that does. It's also really meaningful to have that be something dynamic, where I'm trying to create a town for these people and they're using it. That to me was really cool and really special, and I really connected with that. That's something that gets me thinking a lot about how could these things be done. Another thing was that I really liked having a game that was about building something. Like you need to defend it too, but it's about building more than it is about destroying. A lot of games are really focused on tearing stuff down, about destroying stuff. And this was a game about bringing order to chaos, about rebuilding. I remember when playing Breath of the Wild with my sister, we were talking about how it would have been really cool if after you beat the game, it could transition to a rebuild Hyrule mode. And this kind of hits what that could be like. And that to me was really cool to see that sort of experience. This is a world that's kind of been destroyed and you're trying to rebuild it. And that also was really cool to have that sort of different angle. And that kind of gets me thinking too about what are different types of stories that we could tell that take a different direction. Like, your role in this is the builder. You're building stuff. You're going out to collect resources to rebuild a world that's fallen. And that to me is really cool and is different from just defeat the evil. And I appreciated that. I appreciated the chance to kind of focus on creation. And so that also to me was really cool. The other thing is, this was just for me an experience with building stuff in a voxel environment, and I'm sure that people who have played Minecraft a lot or other similar type games have had this experience before. But it really makes me want to see what could be done in terms of game making software that uses this sort of setup, because I think that there's a lot of possibility there, and it gets me thinking that way as well. So from a, like I said, it's not necessarily novel, but from a game design standpoint, it makes me think about building some sort of intentional system with this, and how some of the ideas that are used here could be translated to similar-ish type games, but that are a different genre. So those are some of the things that I learned. There's also, like I said, some self-observation with things that I personally particularly like in games. The sense of sort of directed creativity, directed freedom, the chance to kind of explore some of that as well, were things that I personally really liked. But anyway, I think that's going to go ahead and cover it for me. So until next time, everyone, take care. Bye-bye.